The new term begins at a large London school, and as always, the atmosphere is filled with noise, shouting, and the restless energy of teenage bodies that refuse to obey the rules. And in the middle of that chaos, there she is, Barbara Covett. A history teacher, dry, precise, and merciless, with eyes that remain cold and thoughts even sharper. She holds her students in contempt just as she does her colleagues, and in truth, everyone who, in her view, lacks the depth to truly see. During a staff meeting, she struggles to conceal her disdain toward the newly appointed art teacher, Sheba Hart.
Is she a sphinx, or simply stupid? A fey person, I suspect.
The woman enters the room wearing a soft smile, slightly uncertain, but strikingly open. She is young, warm, inviting, and immediately noticeable. Barbara watches closely the way her colleagues gather around Sheba, how they look at her, laugh with her, touch her lightly in conversation. She notices everything. Later, during a break, a fight breaks out between two students in Sheba's classroom. She tries to intervene but fails to stop the escalation until Barbara steps in, her voice landing hard and sharp.
Enough! Outside!
The sound vanishes as if struck out of the air. Everyone falls silent. It turns out the boy, Stephen Connolly, had attacked another student over obscene jokes made about Sheba.
He said she's a tart. He said he gave her one of ours.
After the incident, Sheba thanks Barbara. Their exchange is brief but clear. Barbara returns home to silence and to her diary. She buys a new blouse, has her hair trimmed, and arrives on time. But the person who opens the door is not the one she had imagined.
I'm Richard. Come in.
Sheba's husband is much older, with silver in his mustache and the scent of whiskey lingering in the air. Barbara remains silent, quietly registering the disappointment. She had expected a young, confident lawyer, but what she sees is something much closer to herself.
You must be Polly. I'm Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
Polly, Sheba's daughter, is sharp and sarcastic, while Ben, her son who has Down syndrome, is nothing like what Barbara had pictured. In that moment, she realizes the family is far from the polished image she had painted in her mind. After lunch, music begins to play and the family starts to dance, laughing, playing, completely unguarded. Barbara stands at a distance, a cigarette in hand, watching them without expression. She feels like an outsider, but she doesn't leave. Later, in the garden, Sheba leads her to a private studio, a small sanctuary where she paints, hides, and breathes freely.
You're going to be a terrific teacher.
Their conversation becomes more honest, more vulnerable. A closeness forms for the first time. Sheba opens up about her son, about the exhaustion, about the years she gave to motherhood, and the silent desire to escape it all.
You know, marriage and kids, it doesn't give you meaning.
Barbara listens, saying nothing, and later writes in her diary, "A gold star day." She feels certain they are becoming close, perhaps the only ones for each other. But during a school concert not long after, Barbara notices Sheba is late. Concerned, she decides to go looking for her, walks through the corridors and stops in front of a window, and there she sees, off the heaven, Sheba is fastening the buttons on her blouse, and next to her stands Stephen. He walks away, leaving her behind, and Barbara, frozen in place, doesn't blink or move a muscle. Later that evening, she picks up the phone.
I need to speak to you about Stephen Connolly.
During the meeting that follows, Barbara accuses Sheba directly, speaking with calm certainty. Sheba remains silent at first, but then slowly begins to confess. It all started with small things. Stephen scoring goals for her, bringing her drawings, staying behind after class.
Came to see me.
Miss, would you have a look at my drawings, please?
Barbara listens and watches, but even now, she hasn't decided what to do. Barbara, devastated by the impending loss of her beloved cat, hopes that Sheba will come with her to the vet for a final farewell. But Sheba, flustered and in a rush, explains that the entire family is headed to Ben's school play and she can't leave her son behind. They're already late and everyone is going together. Barbara, standing by the car, begins to tremble, not from grief, but from something colder, something deeper. Her voice hardens as she warns Sheba to make the right decision, one she won't regret. But Sheba climbs into the vehicle, closes the door, and drives away with her family. And in Barbara's eyes, that is the moment of betrayal. Later, after laying her cat to rest, Barbara reflects bitterly on what she sees as abandonment. She sits alone until there's a knock at her door. It's Brian, a fellow teacher, who hesitantly brings up a personal matter involving Sheba. They sit, he fidgets, then he asks the question that's been burning within him.
I was wondering if she's ever mentioned me.
Barbara, pausing just long enough, quietly says no, and then, with surgical calm, she reveals that Sheba isn't interested in men. She goes further, carefully dropping a rumor she knows will land like a wound. She tells him about Stephen. His expression collapses. Not long after, Sheba calls and invites Barbara over for dinner. The air is strangely warm, like nothing has happened, but beneath the surface, something is shifting. Something is closing in. Midway through the evening, an eruption. Stephen's mother arrives at Sheba's door in a storm of fury, screaming, flailing, striking her violently in front of everyone. Richard and Stephen's father try to pull her away, but she keeps swinging until finally the chaos splits them apart. Polly and Ben witness the scene, their confusion and fear silently exploding into the room. Richard's face is drained of color, and the fracture between him and Sheba grows deeper with every passing second. Barbara stands aside, denying any involvement, watching as the house she so admired begins to crack from within. The next day, it happens. Sheba is escorted out of the school by authorities, her silence surrounded by a storm of whispers, half-truths, and spreading speculation. Rumors bloom like stains across corridors. Teachers exchange glances they won't explain. And soon the headmaster, stern, exhausted, carrying the weight of damage control, calls Barbara into his office. He questions her, pressing with the certainty of someone who has already made up his mind. He is convinced that she must have known about the affair for far longer than she claims. Barbara denies it with steady eyes and careful tone, calm and confident, but it doesn't convince him, and then comes the second blow. He mentions Jennifer Dodd, once a colleague, once something closer, and reveals what Barbara had hoped was buried, that Jennifer had threatened her with legal action, filing to keep her at a distance. The past is no longer behind her. It is here, and it is loud. With no room left to retreat, Barbara agrees to resign. Outside her flat, journalists begin to gather, cameras raised, voices sharp, questions cutting through the air. From the window, she watches them in silence, unmoving, invisible behind the glass. Eventually, she visits Sheba, who now lives in isolation. Her name, her face, her scandal spread across every front page. They speak, though neither of them says much that can help. Sheba, unraveling, is convinced that Stephen told his parents and that his confession is what started the collapse. Days pass in limbo. And then, with nowhere left to go, Sheba arrives at Barbara's door with a suitcase and quiet eyes and moves in. She tells Barbara that their time together is the most meaningful experience she's ever had. Barbara listens, soaking in every word, holding on to every glance, every meal they share, every moment that feels just a little too domestic. For the first time, her world seems full, like the life she has imagined for so long is finally, quietly beginning to form. But it won't last, and somewhere inside she knows it, because nothing built on secrets ever really does. While wandering through a local market one afternoon, Sheba stumbles upon something she never expected to find. A torn page from a diary, thrown aside and covered in faded golden stars, its edges frayed like something meant to be hidden but left behind in haste. Curiosity turns quickly into unease as she digs further through the bin, eventually uncovering the rest of it, Barbara's diary, full and intact. And inside, there is no ambiguity. Every line pulses with fixation, her obsession, her quiet manipulations, her deliberate betrayals, all of it laid bare in Barbara's own handwriting. Sheba brings the book home in silence, but the weight of what she's read doesn't stay silent for long.
You think this is a love affair? What? Sticky gold stars and a strand of my hair?
The confrontation that follows is immediate and explosive, a blur of accusations and disbelief, of shattered trust and sharp, unforgiving words. She no longer sees Barbara as a misguided friend or protective figure. Barbara, visibly shaken, tries to explain herself, but the mask has already been torn away and nothing she says now can change what's been exposed. Outside, the press gathers in thick waves, reporters, cameras, voices, lights, all pressing against the walls of their private war. The apartment becomes a stage, and Barbara, trapped inside it, can only watch as her carefully maintained illusion begins to crumble in public view. Sheba, exhausted and hollowed out, but suddenly clear, walks out the door with finality in her step. Weeks pass, the headlines shift. Sheba is sentenced to 10 months in prison, though some papers quietly suggest that reconciliation with her family may not be out of reach. Sometime later, Barbara sits on a park bench beside a woman named Annabelle. They talk briefly. Barbara suggests a concert at the Albert Hall. She smiles, casually, graciously, and just like that, it begins again.